Under the blazing Egyptian sun, the pyramids look almost ordinary now. Tour buses idle, cameras click, people squint up at those familiar triangles of stone. We have seen this image 1,000 times, but imagine the camera pulling away from the light and sinking down through the sand, past the foundations, into the dark. Beneath the heat and the crowds, another Egypt waits. Faint corridors appear, cut into bedrock. Long, echoing chambers stretch into blackness. Massive stone sarcophagi sit in silent rows, like parked ships for a journey no one remembers. Did you know that under places like Saqqara, archaeologists walk through underground avenues where each granite box can weigh more than 60 tons? It feels less like a graveyard and more like a buried station, a hidden terminal for the afterlife. Most of us were taught to look up. Pyramids, obelisks, towering temple walls. Egypt, we were told, is about what rises into the sky. Kings wanted to touch the sun. Pharaohs wanted to be seen. But old legends tell a different story. What if the real heart of this civilization was never above the sand at all? What if the most important world was the one that disappeared into the earth? For thousands of years, schoolbook diagrams have repeated the same idea. Pyramids as royal tombs and treasure vaults. A dead king, some gold, a sealed door. Simple, but what really happened in the spaces no tourist ever enters? What kind of knowledge was practiced in those tunnels beneath the monuments, where the air grows still and the light vanishes behind you? And, most importantly, were these places built for the dead or for the living who wanted to rehearse death? Look beneath the step pyramid of Djoser at Saqqara. There, a labyrinth of passages runs for hundreds of meters, some still not fully explored. Travel to Abydos, and the Osirian lies sunken below ground level, a stone island surrounded by water, echoing creation myths, and the underworld of Osiris. According to the stories, these were not just crypts, they were ritual landscapes, training grounds, silent schools where a tiny circle of initiates, pharaohs and priests, learned to move through the gates of the Duat long before their bodies were wrapped in linen. Did you know that modern scanners, from ground-penetrating radar to muon tomography, now reveal hidden voids and unseen chambers inside and beneath Egypt's most famous monuments? It is as if the stone itself has been keeping a curriculum secret. Labyrinths, catacombs, and ritual spaces begin to look less like scattered tombs and more like a single, buried city of initiation. A city designed not for crowds, but for the few who were allowed to walk in the dark. Welcome back to the channel. Here, we explore the mysteries, history, and forgotten lore of ancient Egypt, slowly and calmly, so you can relax, unwind, and drift off while learning about one of the most fascinating civilizations in human history. From the pyramids and hidden chambers beneath the sands, to the gods, pharaohs, and ancient stories carved into temple walls along the Nile. If you enjoy relaxing history like this, consider subscribing and joining us for more journeys into the ancient world. Now, dim the lights, get comfortable, and let's return to the sands of Egypt. In this episode, we will descend into that secret city. We will follow, step by step, the imagined journey of an ancient initiate, from the blinding sun to the first cool breath depth of the underground, from the outer temples everyone sees to the hidden chambers almost no one is told about. And as we move deeper, we'll find out together how old legends and new technology are finally starting to tell the same story. What were they doing down there? Framing the forbidden syllabus. So if we really follow that initiate down, what were they doing down there? If these underground complexes were not just tombs, then what were they for? Why carve miles of tunnels beneath the step pyramid of Djoser when a simple burial chamber would do? Who was allowed to cross those hidden thresholds? And most importantly, what did they learn in the dark that they could never learn in the light? For thousands of years, visitors have walked over Saqqara and only seen sand and broken stone. Beneath their feet, the Serapeum holds granite sarcophagi weighing more than 60 tons, lined up in echoing corridors cut from the bedrock. Did you know some passages seem oversized for human use, as if built for a ritual procession rather than a practical burial? Old legends tell a different story, that these were not halls of death, but training grounds for a journey beyond the body. Imagine the underground not as a basement, but as a school, a hidden campus, every passage a lesson, every chamber a test. This is the forbidden syllabus of stone, a curriculum written in hieroglyphs and geometry, in darkness and resonance, reserved for pharaohs, priests, and carefully chosen initiates. According to the stories, only those who had proven their discipline in the outer temples were led below, step by step, into the rehearsed underworld. What kind of knowledge was worth carving an entire secret city into the bedrock? Were these tunnels maps of the Duat, the Egyptian underworld with its gates, guardians, and rivers of fire? When an initiate stood in a narrow passage beneath Djoser, were they walking a living diagram of the soul's journey after death? Or were they practicing something even stranger, controlled out-of-body travel, guided by chants that made the stone itself vibrate? Modern technology is beginning to press its ear to this silence. Ground-penetrating radar and muon scans have revealed hidden voids inside the Great Pyramid and anomalies beneath temple complexes. Some are officially unexplained. Others are sealed, their entrances blocked. Why? What secrets do these unopened chambers hold? Are they empty spaces or unopened chapters of that forbidden syllabus of stone? In this series, The Mystery Schools of Egypt, we treat architecture, myth, and ritual as one integrated system. The Osirian at Abydos, sunk below ground level like an island in dark water, suddenly looks less like a random monument and more like a teaching diagram of creation and return. The catacombs of Saqqara stop being just storage for the dead and become corridors of initiation. Throughout this episode, we'll walk those tunnels in imagination. We will read the walls as a textbook. We'll test the safe, mainstream claims against older, more esoteric interpretations, and we'll find out together which fits the evidence better. By the end, you will see why the Egyptians carved a city into the underworld, how it mapped onto their vision of the Duat, and what modern discoveries suggest may still lie sealed beneath the sands, waiting for its next initiate. From tourist postcards to underworld maps, reframing Egypt. So before we descend into that hidden city, we need to step back and look at the Egypt we think we already know. The Egypt of glossy tourist postcards and textbook diagrams. The green ribbon of the Nile, the silhouettes of Luxor and Karnak glowing at sunset, the Giza Plateau rising from an empty desert, and the strange, stair-stepped outline of Djoser's pyramid at Saqqara. Most of us were taught to see these as isolated monuments scattered across an open, sandy stage. A temple here, a pyramid there, each one labelled neatly: tomb, mortuary temple, burial complex. In this picture, the story is simple. Pyramids and tombs were built to house the dead. Temples were houses of the gods. Underground chambers were for storage, or at best, plain burial shafts. Did you know this neat diagram leaves something important out? It treats the sand as a blank page and everything below the surface as an afterthought. But beneath the step pyramid of Djoser lies a labyrinth of tunnels stretching hundreds of meters, cut deep into the bedrock. Beneath Saqqara, the Serapeum hides massive granite sarcophagi in echoing corridors. At Giza, scans have revealed hidden voids and secret chambers inside the Great Pyramid itself. According to the stories, this is exactly what the ancients expected. Old legends tell a different story about Egypt's sacred sites. Herodotus spoke of a vast labyrinth with 12 courts and thousands of chambers. Later writers whispered of secret halls of records. Priests in Hellenistic times hinted that what we see on the surface are only outer courtyards, while the real sanctuaries lie below, protected by darkness and stone. So what if the mainstream labels are only half right? Yes, bodies were placed in these complexes. Yes, offerings were made to the gods. But what really happened in those underground passages? What kind of knowledge demanded miles of tunnels, false doors, and sealed gates of rock? For thousands of years, initiates across different cultures used descent into the earth as a ritual of transformation. The Greeks had cave oracles. Early Christian monks sought underground crypts. In Egypt, the pattern is even clearer. Those so-called funerary complexes begin to look like training grounds, mystery schools where the living rehearsed death. Imagine walking down chamber by chamber as torches fade and the air cools. Each gate, each corridor, each carved scene on the wall becomes a stage of the journey through the duat. The initiate lies in a stone box like the sarcophagi of the Serapeum, not to be buried forever, but to simulate the stillness of the tomb and awaken on the other side with new knowledge. Most importantly, this reframes the entire sacred landscape. The temples and pyramids above become the sky, the visible world. The tunnels and catacombs below become the duat itself, mapped in stone. Egypt stops being a scatter of monuments and turns into a three-dimensional diagram of the cosmos, heaven, earth, and underworld stacked together. If that is true, then the sand between the monuments is not empty at all. It is the ceiling of a hidden curriculum. So where exactly are the classrooms of this underworld school? And what signs did the pharaohs leave to guide us down? Who got the keys inside Egypt's most restricted doors? So where exactly are those classrooms, and who was trusted with the keys? Did you know that in ancient Egypt, the busiest places were often built right on top of the quietest secrets? On the surface, temple life was almost theatrical. Courtyards blazed with sunlight and incense. Pilgrims lined up with baskets of bread and beer, bringing flowers, perfumes, and petitions. Musicians shook sistrums, dancers moved in rhythm, and priests processed past in white linen, carrying statues of the gods. Public rituals unfolded in carefully timed waves, reassuring the people that the cosmos was still in balance. But old legends tell a different story about what lay behind the scenes. Behind painted walls and towering pylons, doorways branched into places the crowds never entered. A side gate here, a narrow passage there, and sometimes, at the back of a sanctuary, a stone slab in the floor that was not just a slab at all, but the lid of a stairway. Locked, sealed, guarded. According to the stories, those stairways led down into the real schools, torch-lit corridors, low ceilings echoing with distant chants, rock-cut chambers under Saqqara, beneath the step pyramid's labyrinth, beneath temples like Abydos and its sunken Osirian. Down there, the noise of the festival faded, and another kind of training began. Who was allowed below? Not the scribes learning to copy accounts in the bright courtyards, not the apprentices shaping stone blocks or mixing pigments. Their education was about fields, taxes, and craft, useful but ordinary. The underground curriculum was reserved for a smaller circle. Pharaohs, raised from birth as living gods in training, high priests, guardians of ritual technology who knew which words, sounds, and gestures could open a chamber of the Duat, and a narrow band of initiates who had passed earlier tests in the outer halls. Most importantly, their lessons were not about careers, they were about death. These hidden schools rehearsed the journey through the Duat long before the body was wrapped in linen. Initiates memorized gates, guardians, and passwords. They practiced stillness in absolute darkness. They learned to move their awareness, what later texts called the Ka, as if it could step beyond the skin and walk. The ultimate goal was not just to survive the afterlife, but to navigate it with precision, to stand before judges and demons unafraid, to speak the names that halted chaos, to keep consciousness intact as worlds shifted, to emerge on the other side as an Ak, a luminous, effective spirit that could act in both realms. Imagine you are chosen. The priests lead you past the crowds, past the music and the incense, to a doorway no one else seems to notice. A key turns, stone grinds. You descend a staircase that was invisible from the courtyard. The air cools. The light fades to a circle of flame in the priest's hand. Your heartbeat fills the silence. And in that moment, as the temple above becomes a distant rumor, the real teaching begins. But what really happened in those depths? What kind of knowledge demanded a descent into darkness? In the next part of our journey, we'll find out together by following the clues left in the very walls of these underground cities of stone. The first witnesses, ancient authors who hinted at a hidden city. The real question is, were those depths only for the dead, or did some people walk them while still alive? To answer that, we have to listen to the first witnesses, not modern archaeologists with scanners and drones, but ancient authors who claimed Egypt hid entire worlds beneath its temples. Did you know one of them actually walked through a stone maze he said outshone the pyramids? Herodotus, writing in the 5th century BCE, describes a colossal labyrinth in Egypt. 12 covered courts, 3,000 rooms. Half of them, he says, were underground, corridors twisting and turning, sealed doors, chambers without windows, walls covered in carved figures and sacred inscriptions only priests could explain. By the time Herodotus visited, the Old Kingdom pharaohs had been dust for nearly 2,000 years. The Great Pyramid was already ancient. Yet he insists that this hidden complex, attached to the Pyramid of a King near Lake Moeris, was more astonishing than anything above ground. According to the stories he heard, the upper rooms held the records of kings. The lower, unseen halls were reserved for the crocodile god and the dead, a double world, one for public memory, one for secret rites. Later writers echo him. Strabo, in the 1st century BCE, also speaks of a labyrinth in Egypt, with countless halls, doors aligned in bewildering patterns, and underground passages that only guides dared enter. Pliny the Elder repeats the tale, adding that earlier kings used this place for councils and sacred ceremonies. For thousands of years, readers shrugged and called it exaggeration. Old legends tell a different story. In the 19th century, archaeologists uncovered the remains of a vast complex near Hawara that many now link to this legendary labyrinth. The superstructure is ruined, but traces of endless foundations suggest an immense, multi-roomed building. Beneath it, hints of lower levels and flooded passages remain. Esoteric interpreters look at this and see more than administration. They see a syllabus carved in stone. They point to the Osirian at Abydos, sunk below ground level, imitating a primordial island surrounded by water. Massive blocks, a central island approached by a causeway. The whole design feels like a model of the underworld, a staged descent into the Duat. They connect it to Herodotus's underground rooms, to the maze at Hawara, and to rumors of sealed tunnels under Saqqara and Giza. But what really happened inside these hidden chambers? What kind of knowledge needed windowless rooms, multiple levels, and doors that only certain priests could pass? Most importantly, why build a stone labyrinth if the goal was only to store mummies or tax records? One possibility is that these were not just tombs or archives, but parts of a larger initiatory network, a secret city beneath the sands where chosen students rehearsed the journey beyond death. Upper halls for teaching sacred texts and astronomy, middle corridors for rituals of purification, deepest vaults for simulated encounters with the gates and guardians of the Duat. If that is true, then Herodotus and the others did not see the whole mystery. They caught fragments, echoes, a few surviving classrooms of a much older school for the soul. In the next part of our journey, we'll find out together how modern discoveries are beginning to trace the outlines of that buried campus of stone. Libraries of stone, texts, tunnels, and the memory of the Duat. If those were only the classrooms, then where were the textbooks? What kind of knowledge did an underground school for the soul actually use? For thousands of years, Egyptian priests guarded a different kind of library, not shelves of novels, but collections of spells, hymns, and maps for the afterlife. The earliest copies hide in the pyramid texts, carved inside royal tombs of the Old Kingdom. Later, the coffin texts spread those same formulas to nobles. By the New Kingdom, many of them had flowed into what we now call the Book of the Dead, the Book of Coming Forth by Day. A soul was not sent into the Duat empty-handed. It carried a script. These were not casual prayers. They were precise technologies of speech. Spell 125 guides the heart through judgment. Other passages name the 12 gates of the night, the lakes of fire, the upside-down fields where stars are sown like seeds. Each line is a coordinate. Each god, gatekeeper, and demon has to be addressed with the exact name, the exact title, the exact password. Miss a word, lose the path. Did you know ancient writers claimed Egypt held formal libraries for these secrets? Clement of Alexandria spoke of 42 sacred books of the priests, covering hymns, cosmology, astronomy, medicine, and ritual. According to the stories, some scrolls could be read by temple staff, but others were restricted to higher ranks, sealed in sanctuaries and houses of life. Imagine long, cool rooms lined with papyrus, where scribes copied manuals of star lore, instructions for embalming, and detailed scripts for rituals of rebirth. But old legends tell a different story about where the most important volumes were stored. They say the greatest books were not written on papyrus at all. They were carved into stone. Look at the underground chambers of the Valley of the Kings. The walls unfold with entire compositions. The Amduat, the Book of Gates, the Book of Caverns. Pharaohs descend through corridors where every surface is crowded with deities, serpents, boats, and bands of stars. Here, the text is not beside the journey, it is the journey. The tomb becomes a three-dimensional scroll. The same pattern appears in the Osirion at Abydos and the deep galleries beneath pyramids and temples. Passages narrow, then open into painted rooms where the ceiling is a star map and the walls recite the underworld hour by hour. Most importantly, these spaces are walked. The body moves through the sentences. Imagine the curriculum. Above ground, initiate study in the house of life, repeating spells, tracing hieroglyphs of jackals and solar boats, learning which gate requires which name. Then, at the right moment, the lesson shifts. Torches are lit. A door opens. The class descends. Now the library is around them. Every step passes another spell. Every turn reveals a new chapter. The initiate must remember. Speak here. Be silent there. Face this guardian. Avoid that pool. The corridors themselves become a rehearsal of the duat. But what really happened at the end of that path? If the walls were the syllabus, then the twists, gates, and chambers were the final exam. And in the next section, we'll find out together what that exam might have demanded from a living soul. Scanning the invisible, how modern tech redraws Egypt's map. To reach that final exam, the initiate had to pass through stone itself. But what if those corridors and gates did not end where the light stops? What if beneath the sands, the exam hall continues into a hidden city we are only now beginning to trace? Today, the new initiates are not priests, but machines. Ground-penetrating radar sends pulses into the earth and listens for echoes, like a mechanical dowser hearing where the rock is hollow. Satellite imaging watches tiny changes in temperature and color from far above, revealing buried walls and avenues. Even stranger, muon tomography uses particles from space, tiny cosmic messengers, to see through solid stone. When fewer particles pass through a region, it hints at a void, a secret chamber, a missing piece of the map. Did you know that this is how the so-called Big Void above the Grand Gallery in the Great Pyramid, was found. No one dug, no one broke a single block. The pyramid was quietly bathed in muons, and the data whispered back, "There is a space here, at least as long as the Grand Gallery itself, sealed for thousands of years. No inscriptions, no entrance, just a silent absence in the heart of the stone." What kind of knowledge needed a cavity like that? Around the Giza Plateau, radar and satellite scans have also revealed anomalies, linear shapes, dense clusters, and shadowy rectangles just beneath the surface. Official reports mention some. Others remain in raw data, unpublished, or dismissed as natural. But old legends tell a different story. They speak of hidden halls under the pores of the Sphinx, of tunnels linking pyramid to pyramid, school to school, as if Giza were only the rooftop of a much larger complex below. South at Saqqara, beneath the step pyramid of Djoser, a labyrinth of tunnels and chambers. Modern mapping has redrawn parts of this maze, showing shafts, galleries, and side rooms like the branches of a stone tree. Yet archaeologists openly admit that only a fraction of Egypt's subsurface has been scanned, and many signals from radar and muons have never been physically explored. Whole sections of the underworld architecture remain only as glowing shapes on computer screens. And then there is Luxor. For centuries, a sacred avenue lined with hundreds of sphinxes lay buried under houses, streets, and shops. The avenue of sphinxes connecting Luxor and Karnak was not lost in myth. It was literally under people's feet. Bit by bit, the modern city was peeled back, and a processional way 3 kilometers long re-emerged, proving that entire ritual corridors can vanish into sand and stone, and then rise again. If an avenue that vast can disappear, what else is still sleeping? Most importantly, what lies beneath what we have not yet scanned? Ancient texts describe the Duat as a structured realm. Regions, gates, guardians, and lakes of fire laid out like a cosmic blueprint. According to the stories, there were hidden halls where the blessed dead and the living initiate might meet. With every new void tunnel and buried road our instruments reveal, the Duat begins to look less like pure imagination and more like a memory of real networks below. Perhaps the mystery schools were not only rehearsing a spiritual landscape, but walking a physical one, a secret underworld city that modern technology is just beginning to outline in faint, glowing lines. But if that map is real, then another question opens before us like a gate. Who or what were these hidden routes meant to reach on the other side? Into the stone labyrinth, Saqqara, Serapeum, and Abydos. To follow those faint, glowing lines on the map, we have to leave the sun behind. Under the sands of Egypt, the gates of this hidden city open not with fanfare, but with a narrow crack in the rock and a breath of cold air. Imagine we are at Saqqara, at the entrance to the Serapeum. The desert is blazing, but the doorway yawns black. We step down. The light falls away behind us. The corridor is tight, carved straight into the bedrock, the ceiling just above our heads. Each footstep sends a dull echo racing ahead, as if the stone itself is answering. The air cools, dries, and thickens. We turn a corner, and the passage suddenly widens into a long, straight gallery. To the left and right, chambers open like side alleys in an underground street. Inside them sit hulking granite sarcophagi, each one 60 or 70 tons of polished stone. Did you know some of these boxes are so precisely carved that a modern engineer would struggle to reproduce them? Their lids weigh more than entire modern trucks. Most of us grew up believing this was only a burial place for sacred bulls. But old legends tell a different story. Standing here in front of these impossible containers, the scale feels deliberate, overwhelming, as if initiates were meant to feel tiny in the face of something ancient and absolute. Not far away, beneath the step pyramid of Djoser, the labyrinth tightens. We descend again, this time into a network that stretches for hundreds of meters in every direction. Some corridors are lined with blue faience tiles that shimmer like water. Others are bare, plain, and silent. Chambers open, then dead end. Side passages double back on themselves. This is not a simple tomb. It feels like a maze designed to disorient, to test memory and courage, to mirror the confusing journey through the Duat, with its countless gates and guardians. Far to the south at Abydos, the descent changes tone. The Osirion waits below ground level, hidden behind the more formal temple of Seti I. To reach it, we walk down into a sunken hall where massive sandstone blocks rise like an island out of a trench that once held water. According to the stories, this island echoed the first mound of creation rising from the primeval flood. Here, the initiate would stand surrounded by dark water and towering stone, enacting the death and resurrection of Osiris, stepping into primordial chaos to be reborn. Across all three places, the body feels the curriculum before the mind can name it. The cool air on skin, the echo of our own breathing. Torchlight or dim electric lamps barely pushing back the darkness, so the edges of the chambers melt into shadow. Sound behaves strangely, bouncing and folding, turning a whispered spell or a priest's chant into something larger than a human voice. What kind of knowledge was being imprinted here, not just through texts, but through the nervous system itself? For thousands of years, these spaces have been treated as separate curiosities: a bull cemetery, an early pyramid complex, a mysterious temple of Osiris. But when we line them up in our minds, they begin to look like stations in a single underworld route, a tight descent among impossible sarcophagi, a confusing stone maze, a watery island of rebirth. It reads like a syllabus in rock, a hidden school of the afterlife carved beneath the sand. But if these are stations, then there must have been guides. Who led the initiates through this stone labyrinth, and what rituals turned fear into mastery? Most importantly, can traces of those rites still be read in the walls and texts they left behind? In the next step of our journey, we follow the priests themselves into the heart of the mystery schools and listen for the instructions they whispered in the dark, the deeper question behind the tunnels. Listen for the instructions they whispered in the dark. But there is a deeper question hiding beneath those whispers. It is not only, what did they do down there? It is, why bury an entire curriculum of the soul under tons of rock and sand in the first place? What kind of knowledge demands a labyrinth? On the surface, the answers seem simple. Protect the dead from grave robbers. Keep royal bodies and treasures safe. Use the cool, dry earth as a natural vault so carvings, pigments, and papyri survive for thousands of years. Practical, clever, efficient. But when we stand in places like the Serapeum of Saqqara, those answers begin to crack. Imagine those corridors, perfectly cut tunnels disappearing into the bedrock, housing granite sarcophagi that weigh over 60 tons each, dragged into place with impossible precision. This is not the minimum effort needed to hide a body. This feels ceremonial, almost theatrical, as if the underground itself was part of the ritual. Did you know some of these complexes are decorated not like storage rooms, but like cosmic diagrams, covered in stars, serpents, and gods guiding a journey through the afterlife? The same pattern appears under the step pyramid of Djoser, where a maze of chambers stretches for hundreds of meters, and at the Osirian in Abydos, sunken below ground level, like a primordial island rising from dark waters. If this was only about safety or climate control, why encode creation myths into the floor plan? Why carve entire books of the Duat on walls no ordinary visitor would ever see? According to the stories, even many priests were never allowed into the deepest passages. Access narrowed as the tunnels descended. So we return to the unsettling question: what did they learn down there that was so dangerous, so powerful, or so sacred it had to be hidden from almost everyone? Was it a political secret, a technology, or something stranger, a map of consciousness itself? Old legends tell a different story than the simple tomb explanation. They speak of hidden schools where pharaohs rehearsed death, where initiates face symbolic annihilation to awaken a second inner life. In that worldview, the Duat was not a metaphor. It was a real structured realm with gates, guardians, and trials that every soul would meet. To know its paths was not trivia. It was survival. Most importantly, knowledge of that realm was a dividing line. If the heart failed its weighing against Ma'at, if the right names and passwords were missing, the soul did not merely wander, it could be cut off, unmade. So imagine what it meant to hold the full map, every gate, every spell, every ritual gesture. In the wrong hands, that is not just information, that is leverage over eternity. So the tunnels became filters, stone turned into secrecy. Only those prepared, purified and tested could step into the deeper chambers where the Duat was not just described, but enacted. To understand the secret city beneath the sands, we have to understand the invisible city it was built to mirror, because beneath the limestone and granite, another architecture is waiting, the Egyptian vision of the afterlife itself. And in that other city, the rules of life, death, and memory are nothing like what we have been taught. The Duat, Egypt's otherworld as a structured realm. In that invisible city, death is not a wall, it is a gate. The ancient Egyptians believed that when the body stopped breathing, the real journey began. Did you know they imagined the afterlife not as a vague cloud realm, but as a mapped, structured world called the Duat? To them, this other world was as detailed as Egypt itself, with its own geography, its own rivers, its own dangerous borderlands. You did not simply drift into it, you had to travel through it. Imagine a midnight landscape beneath the sand. A black river curls through the dark, its surface broken by narrow boats, gliding in silence, guided only by torchlight and starlight reflected in the water. On one bank stretch fields glowing with a dim silver radiance, where souls harvest grain under a ceiling of constellations. On the other side, caverns open like wounds in the earth, some filled with fire that roars without smoke, others flooded with cold, still water where serpents coil just below the surface. This underworld was a complicated world filled with rivers of fire, endless chambers, and gates guarded by terrifying beings. According to the stories, every region had its own guardians and its own rules. There were halls where gods sat in rows like judges, and corridors where hybrid creatures, half man, half beast, waited at their posts, demanding names, titles, and passwords. Old legends tell a different story than a simple heaven or hell. They describe a labyrinth of tests. Most importantly, this labyrinth was divided into time itself. The duat was said to unfold in 12 sections, the 12 hours of the night, through which the sun god Ra sailed in his boat. Each hour was a distinct zone with its own gates, its own lakes and islands, its own hostile beings. In the Amduat and the Book of Gates, priests carved these hours in precise order on tomb walls, hour by hour, gate by gate, encounter by encounter. It reads less like a myth and more like a timetable. These funerary texts were not just poetic images. They functioned as a cosmic rulebook. They listed the exact sequence of guardians the soul would meet, the secret names of serpents and demons, the formulas that had to be recited without error. Speak the wrong word, fail to recognize a gate, and the journey could end in oblivion. What kind of knowledge turns a story into an operating manual for the afterlife? But what really happened when these rules were brought back into stone? If the duat is a structured underworld of corridors, regions, and locked thresholds, then a network of underground passages can become more than storage or burial space. It becomes a model, a training ground. For thousands of years, pharaohs and priests walked through hidden tunnels, passing carved doorways and sealed chambers that echoed the 12 hours of night. Were these secret complexes designed as rehearsal versions of the duat itself, where initiates practiced moving through darkness, facing symbolic guardians, and speaking the right words in the right place? We'll find out together as we descend into the man-made underworld beneath Egypt, where stone imitates spirit, and where the map of the next world is written into the walls of this one. Guardians, gates, and cosmic law, inside the rules of the underworld. To understand those hidden corridors, we have to understand the rules of the world they were imitating. The duat was not a vague idea of the afterlife. It was a system, a cosmic bureaucracy of gates, guardians, and laws. In text after text, the pattern repeats. The soul moves through darkness, then suddenly, an opening, a gate. At that threshold stands a guardian or an entire group of beings, gatekeepers with knives, serpents of fire, hybrid creatures with blazing eyes. They do not ask, "Who are you?" They demand, "Say my name, recite my spell, prove you belong here." Did you know that in many versions of the Book of the Dead, each hour of the night has its own portal with its own password? The deceased must announce the names of the gate, the floor, even the door bolts. Not just a serpent, but the serpent's true name. Not just a lake, but the lake's hidden designation. This was not poetry. It was training material. For the Egyptians, names were not labels. They were operating codes. To speak a being's true name was to align with its essence, to step into the pattern that held it together. If you knew the secret formulas, the guardians became allies. If you failed, the same forces turned on you as weapons of chaos. According to the stories, a single mistake could be fatal. Mispronounce a name, leave out a line, forget which gate you were standing before, and the texts say you could be cut apart, burned, or trapped in a region of the duat with no exit. This was a universe where precision meant survival. Most importantly, it meant that any mystery schools preparing souls for this journey had to be ruthless about detail. And then there was the ultimate checkpoint, the Hall of Ma'at. Imagine a vast hall lined with deities, the air heavy with incense and judgment. In the center, a great scale. On one side, the heart of the deceased. On the other, the feather of Ma'at, the principle of truth, balance, and cosmic order. Nearby waits Amit, the devourer, part crocodile, lion, and hippo, ready to swallow the hearts that fail the test. Here, moral life and ritual knowledge meet. The soul recites the negative confessions, declaring the wrongs it has not done, while the scale silently weighs the truth of those words. A light heart, aligned with Ma'at, can move on. A heavy heart is annihilated. Old legends tell a different story than a simple reward or punishment heaven. This is a technical audit of the soul. But what really happened in those underground chambers? Imagine walking through a sequence of pitch-black rooms beneath Saqqara or the Step Pyramid, each chamber inscribed with spells, each doorway flanked by carved guardians. At every threshold, initiates stop, speak the names, rehearse the dialogues from the afterlife texts. The body learns where to pause, the tongue learns what to say, the nervous system learns how to stand in front of terror and not flinch. In this light, those secret complexes begin to look like physical simulators of the duat. Gate after gate, corridor after corridor, a rehearsal city for the dead hidden beneath the city of the living. And if stone can imitate spirit this precisely, what other underworld rules might be encoded in the architecture itself? In the next chambers, the answers get even stranger. Practicing death while alive, pharaohs and initiates in the dark. But what if those stone simulators were only the outer layer of the training? What if the real secret was that the journey through the duat did not begin at death at all? Did you know that for the highest ranks of Egyptian society, the afterlife was a path they were expected to start walking while still breathing? Pharaohs, high priests, and select initiates were not just buried as Osiris. Through hidden rituals in the dark, they were trained to become Osiris-En in life, rehearsing the underworld long before their final heartbeat. According to the stories, a pharaoh was not simply crowned, he was gradually remade. In the deepest chambers of the temple, beneath the public courtyards and painted halls, priests staged secret rites of symbolic death. The ruler was stripped of titles, bathed, anointed, and led below ground to lie in a stone sarcophagus or on a lion-shaped bed, enacting the corpse of Osiris. Around him, priests chanted, not for a dead body, but for a living king learning to cross invisible gates. High priests functioned like directors of a sacred drama, orchestrating candles, incense, and sound in carefully measured sequences. Chosen initiates, scribes, temple singers, astronomer priests were admitted step by step, level by level, into this underground school. At first, they might stand at the threshold of a passage. Years later, they would be allowed deeper, into corridors that twisted like the maps of the Duat itself. To walk those passages, they needed more than courage. They needed memory. Texts like the Book of the Dead, the coffin texts, and the Amduat were not meant to be glanced at on a wall in the last days of life. They were drilled for years as mental maps and mantras, until each spell, each gate, each guardian's name lived in the body. Most importantly, this knowledge was tested under pressure. Imagine an initiate, eyes covered or plunged into near total darkness, guided down a sloping tunnel beneath a complex like Djoser's labyrinth at Saqqara. The air is cool and heavy. The only sound is the echo of sandals on stone. Suddenly, the guide's hand leaves their shoulder. A priest's voice booms from the black, reciting the name of a terrifying guardian from the Amduat. Who is this? What do you say to pass? Heart racing, the initiate must answer with the exact words. One mistake, and the ritual stops. Success, and another invisible gate opens. Old legends tell a different story about these rehearsals. They were not seen as mere psychological drills, but as energetic alignments. By syncing breath, voice, and focused attention with the patterns of the Duat, initiates believed they could partially unhook the car, taste an out-of-body journey, and return. For thousands of years, this was their spiritual technology. No machines, only the human body tuned to hidden currents. But what really happened in the deepest, most forbidden chambers, where even many priests could not go? In the next part, we follow the trail into spaces designed to bend sound, silence the senses, and perhaps launch the soul beyond the body itself. Walking the script, encounters, responses, and rewards. To reach those deepest forbidden chambers, it was not enough to walk. You had to answer. You had to prove that your mind and soul were trained for the journey. Did you know that many Egyptian underworld spells follow almost the same script? A being appears in the darkness. It demands a name, a title, a secret. The deceased, or the living initiate in the mystery schools, responds with a precise formula. I am so-and-so, son of so-and-so, born of this city, servant of this god. Then comes something stranger, a declaration of cosmic truths. They recite the names of the gate, the river, even the stars above. Only then does the guardian allow them to pass. This is not random poetry. It is a training pattern. Encounter, question, correct response, passage, over and over again. The Duat becomes a vast examination hall where every wrong word can cost the soul its future. Now imagine walking beneath the step pyramid of Djoser, through its labyrinth of tunnels and chambers stretching hundreds of meters. Old legends tell a different story about these places. On the walls of New Kingdom tombs, we see the same rhythm carved into stone. Rows of gates, each guarded by strange beings, each labeled with names and phrases the soul must know. One chamber shows one set of spells. The next chamber, a different set. Room by room, the architecture itself becomes a curriculum. According to the stories, an initiate might enter the first chamber led by senior priests, stand before a painted guardian, and be ordered to speak. If they could not recite the formula, they stayed. If they succeeded, They stepped through the next doorway, deeper into the earth and deeper into the mystery. The physical journey through corridors and gates mirrored the inner journey through fear, memory, and mastery. This pattern even hints at rewards. The texts promise access to the fields of reeds, a realm of endless harvests and clear water. They speak of joining the solar bark of Ra, sailing with the sun god through the sky and the underworld. Most importantly, they offer the possibility of merging with Osiris, becoming an Ach, a shining, effective spirit. In the hidden schools, these cosmic prizes may have been echoed by ritual acknowledgements, a new title whispered, a new garment placed on the shoulders, a new chamber opened. But what really happened in those moments between the walls? What we see carved in stone is only a fragment of the full performance. Imagine the Serapeum of Saqqara, its rock-cut corridors holding granite sarcophagi weighing over 60 tons, darkness pressing in like a second skin, chants vibrating off the stone, deep drums or sistrums marking each successful answer, long silences where the initiate waits alone, senses stripped down, mind hovering between terror and transcendence. For thousands of years, these rituals may have used sound, darkness, and repetition to bend consciousness itself. A wrong response meant staying in the trial. The right response meant the corridor opened, the torch moved ahead, and the song changed. Gate after gate, chamber after chamber, until, finally, the last guardian appears. What happens at that final gate in the deepest room of all, where maps and spells suddenly fall silent? In the next part, we follow the traces toward a secret city beneath the sands, a place where the exam may not have ended with death at all. The 12 gates, a hidden spine beneath the sand. To understand that final gate, we have to step back and look at the whole night. Did you know the Egyptians imagined the underworld as a 12-fold journey, 12 hours of darkness, 12 regions, 12 gates? From sunset to sunrise, the sun god Ra sailed through the Duat in a sacred boat, stopping at stations where guardians, serpents, and star beings watched the passage. Each hour had its own landscape, its own challenges, its own passwords. This was not a vague myth. It was mapped. In tombs of pharaohs in the Valley of the Kings, the walls unfold like a cosmic storyboard. Long bands of figures show the sunboat moving, hour by hour, through caverns and tunnels. Above and below it, lines of deities stand in rows, each one labelled, each gate named, each challenge explained, almost like an instructional diagram for the soul's afterlife training. Texts like the Amduat and the Book of Gates break the night into numbered segments: first hour, second hour, third hour. We see caverns full of mummies, lakes of fire, and winding corridors that look disturbingly like underground complexes. According to the stories, the sun's crew recites spells, greets guardians by their secret names, and uses precise rituals to keep the boat moving. Miss a word, forget a name, and the journey stalls. Now imagine those painted hours translated into stone beneath our feet. Some researchers have noticed that certain tombs and substructures seem to follow a repeating rhythm, sequences of 12 chambers, 12 niches, 12 repeated motifs carved along a corridor. In the labyrinth, under Djoser's step pyramid, in the rock-cut galleries near Saqqara, there are hints of a measured progression as if the architects were echoing the 12-fold spine of the night. What if those were not random rooms, but stations? Boat stops without the water, gateways without the stars. A hidden spine beneath the sand, built to mirror the cosmic timetable of Ra's passage through the Duat. In such a place, an initiate would not just read about the hours of the night. They would walk them, again and again, corridor after corridor, chamber after chamber, repeating names, facing statues and sealed doors in a fixed order, until the body itself remembered. After enough journeys, the map would move inside. After the third gate comes the Cavern of Coils. After the seventh, the Hall of Blazing Guardians. The fear of the unknown would be replaced by a strange familiarity. But most importantly, the 12th gate was not the end. Some inscriptions hint that beyond it lies a mystery even the texts only gesture toward: union with the sun, transformation into an Ach among the stars. If the stone complexes mirrored the 12 hours, perhaps they were only the outer syllabus. The real exam might have begun where the last chamber ended, inside the mind, and in a city of light no tunnel could hold. In the next section, we follow those hints beyond the 12th gate into the possibility of a secret city beneath the sands and above the sky at the same time. Echoes across cultures, mystery traditions, and the descent motif. To really understand this hidden city of initiation, we have to step back from the sand for a moment. Imagine zooming out until Egypt becomes one point in a much larger web of descent and return. Across the Mediterranean, another secret school guarded its own underground path, the Eleusinian mysteries of Greece. There, initiates entered dark halls, listened to sacred words, and witnessed a drama of death and rebirth, centered on Demeter and Persephone. No one was allowed to reveal what happened inside, but ancient writers hint at torches in the darkness, a terrifying moment of uncertainty, and then a sudden vision of light. Does that sound familiar? Farther east, in the cult of Mithras, the sacred space itself was a cave. Mithric temples were built like artificial caverns, low, narrow, and enclosed, where initiates passed through graded levels of membership. They dined in shadow, beneath images of a god who had descended into a rock and slain a cosmic bull. These were not casual gatherings. They were carefully staged journeys into the underworld of the mind. And long before both, in the ancient Near East, the goddess Inanna was said to descend through 7 gates into the land of the dead. At each gate, she surrendered a piece of her power, her crown, her jewels, her garments, until she stood naked in the realm below, was struck down, and then raised up again. Did you know that, according to the stories, her return transformed not only herself, but the balance of heaven and earth? When we place these traditions side by side, a shared pattern appears. Someone, whether a god or an initiate, goes down. They pass through gates. They face guardians, trials, or a symbolic death. Then, armed with new knowledge or power, they rise. For thousands of years, this descent motif has been the skeleton key of mystery schools. It mirrors the Egyptian journey through the Duat, almost point for point. But what really happened in Egypt takes this pattern to another level. Most cultures hinted at the path with poems and dramas. Egypt carved the route in stone. Tomb walls unfold like atlases of the night, mapping hour by hour, gate by gate, with named guardians, precise passwords, and detailed hazards. The underworld was not just a story, it was a technical manual. Most importantly, this was not a fringe cult hidden at the edges of society. Pharaohs, state priests, and entire temple complexes were woven into this initiatory journey. The Osirian at Abydos sinks below ground like a primordial island. The catacombs at Saqqara, the shafts beneath pyramids, the rock-cut chambers aligned with star paths. Together they hint at an initiatory underworld city where myth, ritual, and architecture fuse into one lived experience. Here's the pattern interrupt. Maybe Egypt's tunnels are not an anomaly at all. Maybe they are the most complete expression of a global language of descent. If Greece, Persia, and Sumer kept fragments, what kind of knowledge did Egypt preserve in full? In the next section, we return beneath the sands to follow that language into the darkest corridors and see how far this hidden city might really extend. Rereading the ruins, what if these weren't just tombs? So let's go back underground, but with new eyes. If these were not just burial vaults, but classrooms of the underworld, how differently do the stones begin to speak? What happens if we walk these places as initiates on a journey, not as corpses being stored? Take the Serapeum of Saqqara. For thousands of years, visitors have stared at those impossible granite sarcophagi, some weighing over 60 tons, sealed in a rock-cut corridor that feels more like a train tunnel than a tomb. Did you know many of these boxes show no clear evidence of ever holding mummies? No carved funerary scenes, no rich grave goods. If this is an initiation school, those oversized sarcophagi suddenly look less like coffins and more like chambers. Imagine priests guiding a candidate into the dark, lowering them into a stone box, closing the lid and leaving them alone with their heartbeat and breath. A rehearsal of entombment used not to end life, but to crack it open. Now shift to the step pyramid of Djoser. Beneath its familiar silhouette lies a labyrinth of tunnels and chambers, stretching for hundreds of meters. Many passages are blind. They go nowhere. Why carve corridors no one will ever use? Old legends tell a different story. They speak of maze-like underworlds where the soul must learn to choose correctly at each gate. If these halls were walked in ritual, a blind passage is no mistake. It is a test, a place where an initiate, eyes covered or in total darkness, must feel their way through fear, confusion, and silence until they find the true path. Then there is the Osirian at Abydos, sunk below ground level, its central stone island surrounded by water. As a tomb, it is strange. As a symbolic map of the first mound of creation rising from the primordial flood, it becomes a teaching chamber. According to the stories, Osiris is the god who dies, is dismembered, and returns as lord of the afterlife. Imagine standing there at night, water black around you, columns rising like reeds from the nun. The initiate crosses a narrow causeway, enacting the passage from death to rebirth. Even the Great Pyramid begins to change. Modern scans have revealed the big void above the Grand Gallery, a hidden volume the size of a cathedral. Engineers call it a structural gap. But what really happened if it was also a resonance chamber tuned by geometry and stone? Sound rising from rituals below could have filled that hidden space, turning it into a vibrating womb of rebirth, a chamber never meant for bodies, only for waves. Over and over, we see architectural choices that feel excessive for simple burials, finely polished corridors no ordinary visitor would ever see, multi-level shafts, sudden changes in angle, chambers that are difficult to access, yet carefully finished. This looks less like a one-time interment and more like a ritual circuit, a route to be walked again and again by those in training. Of course, not everyone agrees. Many Egyptologists argue that these mystery school readings go too far, that they ignore clear evidence of funerary use. Alternative researchers, on the other hand, sometimes leap from a single anomaly to wild conclusions. We are standing between two extremes. So what do we do? Most importantly, we keep both caution and curiosity. Treat this as a thought experiment, not a final verdict. Walk the Serapeum, Djoser's Labyrinth, the Osirian, and the Big Void in your mind as an initiate. Ask, where would the blindfold go on? Where would the chanting begin? Where would the symbolic death reach its deepest point? And where would the first light of rebirth be allowed back in? Because if these are stages in a journey, then the map is not finished. The visible ruins might only be the upper classrooms of a much larger school. In the next section, we follow that possibility into the unmapped dark, toward the hidden levels our instruments are only just beginning to detect, and the secret city that may still be sealed beneath the sand. What still sleeps below? Sealed tunnels and silent scanners. So what happens when the map runs out? When the diagrams of tunnels and chambers simply fade into blank desert? Under the blazing sun, vast regions of Egypt have never been scanned at all. Entire stretches between Saqqara, Dahshur, and the Giza Plateau remain cartographic silence. Even around the famous monuments, there are known corridors choked with debris, stairways drowned by groundwater, and shafts now trapped beneath modern villages and highways. The ancient schools may still be there, but the world has been built right on top of their doors. Beneath the step pyramid of Djoser, a labyrinth of passageways runs for hundreds of meters. Many sections are unstable, flooded, or sealed for safety. At Saqqara's Serapeum, side corridors branch away from the main gallery and vanish into backfilled darkness. Did you know some early maps show niches and side rooms that no visitor can access today? The stone remembers paths our generation has never walked. And then there are the places technology can see, but hands have not yet reached. Ground-penetrating radar has traced rectangular anomalies under temple courtyards. Muon scans have revealed hidden voids high in the Great Pyramid, hovering like silent classrooms above the king's chamber. According to the stories, there are vertical shafts beneath major temples, such as Abydos and Karnak, hinted at in old reports, then quietly dropped from public discussion. Are these only geological pockets and unfinished cuts in the rock, or sealed gates in a curriculum we have not yet read? Rumors grow in that silence. Old legends tell a different story than the official brochures. People speak of sealed doors at the end of blocked tunnels, of inscriptions warning that those who enter unpurified will not return, of unexplored shafts beneath the pores of the Sphinx. Not every rumor is true. Some claims crumble the moment light is shined on them. But what really happened In cases where scans confirm a chamber and then the results go quiet for years, most importantly, we know that institutions do manage the flow of knowledge. Excavations are paused for funding, for politics, for conservation. Discoveries are held back until teams agree on how to interpret them. When a void appears in the data with no clear explanation, it is often easier to delay than to speculate in public. That caution protects the science, but it also feeds the mystery of forbidden archaeology. So we are left with an unsettling question. Is the secret city beneath the sands unknown because it does not exist, or because we have only opened a few of its doors and chosen not to look too closely at the rest? For thousands of years, pharaohs and priests imagined the Duat as a realm of hidden gates, some open, some still sealed. Today, our scanners are beginning to find their stone reflections underground. As technology sharpens and demands for transparency grow, those silent anomalies will not stay silent forever. Within our lifetimes, a blocked tunnel may finally be cleared, a void may be entered, and a new level of Egypt's underworld schools may step out of the dark. But when that happens, what kind of knowledge will we uncover? And who will be allowed to enter the classroom first? We'll find out together as we follow the trail of one of the most provocative clues yet. Why it matters now, the underground city as a mirror for us. Those questions do not just point forward in time. They turn back toward us, because beneath all the scans, the tunnels, and the sealed gates, this whole journey has really been about something closer than any pyramid, the hidden city beneath our own lives. Think about the path we have walked so far. We started in the blazing sun, among familiar monuments labeled as tombs for pharaohs. Then we descended into Saqqara's rock-cut corridors, past the massive sarcophagi of the Serapeum, toward the labyrinth under Djoser's step pyramid, and down into the Osirian at Abydos, half drowned and half buried like a memory of the first time. Along the way, modern scanners revealed new voids, while old legends told a different story about what these places were really for. We followed ancient authors who hinted at hidden schools and priests guarding 42 sacred books of knowledge. We traced the Duat's 12 gates on tomb walls, where the underworld is mapped like a subway system for the soul. We listened as initiates rehearsed death in life, reciting spells from the book of coming forth by day in lightless chambers. Did you know that, according to the stories, some died in ritual only to awaken hours later, claiming they had crossed the river of stars and returned? Most of us grew up believing Egypt's greatest project was building tombs for dead kings. But what if that is the surface story? What if the real construction site was invisible? A vast, multi-layered training ground for consciousness, carved into bedrock and into human minds at the same time. A secret city of initiation beneath the sand, where every corridor, every echo, every ritual was designed to shape how a person met the unknown. When we look at it this way, the obsession with the underworld stops being strange and starts feeling familiar. For thousands of years, humans have feared the same things: darkness, loss, change, the moment when one chapter closes and another begins. The Egyptians did not run from that fear. They mapped it. They named its gates. They turned the panic of what happens after into a curriculum that could be practiced while breathing. Most importantly, this secret city is both literal and symbolic. Yes, there are real stone corridors under our feet, still sealed, still waiting. But there are also inner corridors, tunnels of memory, chambers of regret, gates guarded by shame, grief, and unanswered questions. What kind of knowledge would it take to walk those inner halls with the same courage as an initiate moving through the duat? So here is the challenge these ancient schools quietly hand to us. How do we relate to our own underworld, the parts of life and self we avoid? Do we pretend the journey is not coming? Or do we, like the priests, prepare with rituals of honesty, reflection, and conscious transition? We'll find out together as we explore how Egypt's underworld training might still be echoing in modern practices of death, psychology, and spiritual awakening. Standing at the gate, your next step into the mystery schools. So now, imagine this. The questions fade, and the camera drifts back down into the earth. We are no longer in the bright halls of a museum. We are standing at the mouth of a dark corridor beneath a temple, torch in hand. The air is cool. Sand crunches under our feet. Somewhere ahead, in the blackness, a sound echoes once, then disappears. For thousands of years, countless feet have walked this same path. Priests, initiates, maybe even pharaohs. The walls around us are rough and close, like the inside of a stone throat. On one side, a doorway has been sealed for ages. On the other, faint carvings catch the torchlight. Stars, boats, gates, the looping body of a serpent guarding the way to the afterlife. This episode has only been our first descent. One corridor, one layer of the hidden schools. We have only peeked into a few chambers, the echoing halls of Saqqara, the mysterious voids above the king's chamber, the underground temple of the Osirion that imitates an island in the primordial waters. But what really happened in the deepest rooms, where no sunlight ever entered? What kind of knowledge was passed on in whispers, in the dark? Did you know that archaeologists admit we have mapped only a fraction of what lies beneath Egypt's sands? Ground-penetrating radar and muon scans keep finding new voids, new tunnels, new sealed spaces. According to the stories, there were whole curricula of rituals hidden there. Training in fear, in silence, in stepping beyond the body, and most importantly, in learning to walk the duat with open eyes. This journey is not a solo expedition. We are walking this corridor together. Every question, every theory, every moment of wonder adds another torch to the wall. Think of the comments below as a modern hall of records, a living archive of speculation and insight. Which part of this underground city called to you the most? The colossal sarcophagi of the Serapeum, the labyrinth under Djoser's step pyramid, or the idea that somewhere a sealed gate still waits for the right password to open? And what do you think lies behind those yet unopened doors? A lost library of stone tablets, an initiation chamber tuned to a single perfect note, or something stranger that even the old legends did not dare to name? We'll find out together, because this is only the first gate. Next, we may follow the tunnel to Abydos, to stand in the Osirion and ask why a temple of the underworld was built like a memory of the first time. Or we may step into the resonance of initiation rooms, where sound and star alignments turned the human body into a receiver for other worlds. The sand still hides more than it reveals. If you are willing to keep walking into the dark with us, the next gate is already waiting.